What is good, everybody, man? Appreciate y'all tuning in to the Bluebloods, man. Now, it's so weird saying this now, Coach, man. It's only been a week, man. The official podcast of FCS Football Central over on Sports Illustrated Fan Nation. Go check it out, man. Had a big first week. Listen, we got some really good content coming down the pipeline. But listen, man, Coach's Corner edition, Week 7 recap for FCS football. Coach, we got a lot to talk about. End of a dynasty potentially. Listen, we were on the bandwagon. Our bandwagon has officially broken down after this weekend. We got to get to that as well. But man, Coach, how you feeling, man? Refreshed after your bye week?
Man, it started out a little rough, man, on the road, Kansas, deer situation, just out in Kansas, and ended up in Florida and then back home Saturday in enough time to get on the couch and watch some ball. Feeling refreshed. On to the next week. Big week coming up for us. UAPB homecoming. Got to go down there and sure they'll be playing, like their hair is on fire. And we got to match their intensity, their enthusiasm, and see what we can do at the end of the day with it, man.
Listen, as someone who lived in Kansas for a few years, I feel your pain on that. Send me to Florida every day, all day over going back up to Kansas, man. I'm good. Good on all that, especially this time of year. It gets real cold up there. I don't think people understand. But man, shout out to David in the chat. He said those deers have no care. They don't care.
And I could see him. I could literally see him coming like up the embankment, and it's like it was so silly, man. Like 4-lane, and then it goes into 2-lane, and I'm not even on the 2-lane highway for 10 seconds, and I can see him coming. And I get over just a little bit and just like, boom, it's freaking pitch black. I don't stop because I'm like, nah, I'm not going to do that. So I check the gauges. Nothing's running hot. I let the wheel go. I'm not pulling one way or another. I think I survived it. Like, okay, just a bump. Pull up to my first school. Can't get out the door. Like, you got to be kidding me.
Man, I feel your pain. Listen, even living down here in Mobile, man, it's bad. If you leave the city, you gotta be alert nowadays, man. Driving down here, but Coach, man, speaking of teams taking a bump, we got to start here. We both were really high on the Vandals this year, man. I mean, me and you both. I had them at number 2. You said it was 1A, 1B with South Dakota State at one point of the year. Coach, Montana goes up to the Kibbe Dome, prime time, 9:30 p.m. Central Time kickoff on ESPN2. And Montana gets it done, 23-21 upset win. And Coach, we were texting at halftime, really and truly up until the second half when Idaho found kind of its offensive rhythm. This game really wasn't close.
At all. Like you said, we were texting back and forth. I was just really surprised at the energy, the fire that Montana hit the field with, man. And they just looked like I text you that night, they just look so much faster. They just look so much more engaged in the game and in the moment. They looked like the team that was fighting for their life. And that was one of the things that I thought that would be on the other sideline, like, wanting to show it in the whole nine. And then lo and behold, we all got punched in the mouth the first half and had to come back and regroup. But hats off to Montana, that coaching staff, man. They have those kids playing 100 miles an hour with a lot of energy and a lot of fight, man.
Yeah, I think we'll get to the offensive side because obviously Montana, to start competing like they have been, had to really kind of figure out the offensive identity of the team. But really and truly, the defense has been lights out. I mean, listen, the front 7 is a problem right now for Montana, and a problem in a good way for them. I mean, Coach, this Idaho rushing attack came in. We talked in the preview. Anthony Woods was rolling. The offensive line was clicking. 58 yards rushing on Saturday, 1.8 yards per carry, and Giovanni McCoy was sacked 6 times.
Yeah. And like you said, man, like we said, the first half, it was just, they were playing at a different speed. And I don't think they actually came up and match that intensity, man, at all. And the other thing that I think, just watching it, that Idaho, they didn't take advantage of what they found early, which was the hurry up style offense. I felt like that's when they were at their best. When they huddled and they gave Montana a chance to look at the whole picture, they were in trouble at that point, and then to the second half and they start to pick up the pace and that kind of thing. But again, you can't take anything away from Montana, man. They were a team that was playing desperate, and they held on.
And I think shout out to Timothy, man, in the chat. We're definitely gonna have to get him on soon. But Coach, he made a good point. The way they rotate, especially in that front seven for Montana, I don't think people gave them enough credit for how deep they are in that front seven. I mean, they have a lot of bodies that they can keep fresh. And on top of that, too, Coach, when your front seven is playing like that, we talked beforehand about how their secondary, they came in, I want to say number 2 in the country behind you guys in interceptions. Another big 2 this weekend. They lead the country right now, 11 interceptions. You guys rank second with 10. You guys in Jackson at 10 at number 2. But they are just ball hawks, man. You lose Justin Ford, you lose some of the top corners, but man, these guys just go out there and do it. And they did it against a vaunted passing attack with McCoy, Hayden Hatton. Now, Hayden Hatton did his thing in the second half. Don't get me wrong. He got loose, but to hold, I think the early first half momentum that they had paid off in a huge way. And then on top of that, too, shifting to offensively, they were bad in September. So that was my biggest thing, is the defense was showing some improvement. The offensive line was struggling. They really didn't have an offensive identity as they've rotated quarterbacks, but he might not put up godly numbers or unworldly numbers, but Clifton McDowell has kind of settled that quarterback position, and he makes the right plays consistently, and he's just athletic enough where if you don't account for his legs, he can make you pay in a big way. And then you got Junior Bergen and these wide receivers on the outside that can just go make plays. I think if Montana's offense can continue on this trajectory, Coach, I never thought I'd be saying this, especially at the end of September, but this is a team right now that is playing like the second best team in the Big Sky right now.
And again, I'm not going to take anything from him, but go back what you were saying. CM played lights out, the quarterback position, man. Didn't make any big mistakes. Had very, very timely runs, like you were saying, in the offensive scheme of things. And he found his man JB when needed. For timely passing. And I just think to add on what you were saying, I just think if they play with the same intensity in the first half and they can put it together for 4 quarters, like you're saying, they're going to be a tough out. Second half, I think they kind of took their foot off the pedal just a little bit. Idaho may have forced that, but if Montana can put 4 quarters together the way that they started that game, it's not even going to be close. Like you said, they'll be right where they need to be at the end of the season, which is competing for that championship.
I didn't think that end of the season rivalry game with Montana State was going to be very competitive. I was kind of marking that up as like, okay, that game's probably a Montana walk away. And I still think Montana State's the better team right now, but you can't tell me going to Missoula, playing on the road for Montana State, that this isn't going to be one of the tougher games for them moving forward. I mean, this matchup is looking better and better as Montana continues to improve. And Coach, we went from talking about, is Montana going to possibly be on the bubble for the playoffs, to now they could be a top 8 seed. I mean, Coach, they jumped way up in my rankings. I have them in the top 10 now because right now their resume is a top 10 resume. And I think right this second, they are a top 10 team in the country.
And I saw that. And then I was going to get on you about dropping my guys from 3 to where you drop them to. But then when I looked at the teams that were ahead of them, I'm like, that's fair. I'll give you that. That's fair. And then also Idaho's last game is looking to be, unless they write it back and get to that second halfway, Idaho State's not going to be a pushover. They scored some points. And if they found the remedy to get into games as far as shootouts and things like that, this last game for Idaho could be one of those 42, 49 type games as well. Be a real nice ending to the season for FCS football.
Yeah, and I mean, speaking of that, just quickly on the Idaho State game, that was one I kind of wanted to touch on. What a comeback. I mean, I'll be honest. I mean, I was kind of watching that game and I like just kind of keeping up with it on the side. And I was like, man, of course Eastern Washington is going to walk away with this. Like that game's over. And I kind of stopped monitoring it. And then I got on social media and I saw Idaho State keep tweeting, and it was one step closer. One step closer. I mean, Coach, Eastern Washington led this game 41-14 with 148 left in the third quarter. So not even the whole third quarter. I mean, it was like 16 minutes. They overcame a 41-14 lead. I mean, Coach Jordan Cook, spectacular. I mean, 389, 2 touchdowns. Hunter Hayes in terms of the QB2 role, 134 a touchdown. And they allowed 35 first half points, Coach, but they held them scoreless for 16 minutes and just continued to make plays at crucial moments, man. I mean, shout out to Idaho State because that was a hell of a comeback. Coach, you got any thoughts on this one?
Never stopped. And, that's one of those things where they say momentum is not real. That's one of those things where momentum is real. And you could feel it watching, like you said, watching the score. You could feel it because at one point you're looking, you're like, okay, that's pretty much done. They're cooked. 15 minutes left to go. They're down 30 something or whatever it was. And then all of a sudden you see the thing roll at the bottom of the screen again. And you're like, wait a minute. They're right there. So momentum is real when you're talking about it. And those kids never stop fighting, apparently, man. And that's all you want as a team to kind of put it in there and go from there, bro.
You got a compliment on your hat down here, man. Shout out to Back Hat.
Oh, yeah. Think, you know what I mean? You know what this money is, man. So, trying to support it, man. And thank you to Back Hat, my guy. Yes, sir.
Coach, we got to get to the obvious game here. This was our secondary kind of game of the week here. North Dakota. Man. I mean, what's the word for it? Demolished, dominated, routed. North Dakota State. I mean, Coach, we talked about the South Dakota game a few weeks ago, and, North Dakota State kind of mounted a comeback, made it look a lot more respectable than it obviously was throughout the game, watching the game. They got outplayed from the kickoff until the final whistle blew. I mean, starting the game with a 100-yard kickoff return, and I really do think, I'm not going to say the result would be any different. The energy was just different inside that dome, and for that team, when you're up 7-0 and 2 seconds have come off the clock. I mean, it's got to instill confidence. And then we kind of had this narrative of North Dakota State running the football down people's throats, knowing it's coming. You can't stop the Bison from running the football. You look at North Dakota, 200 yards rushing, 4 rushing touchdowns, 5 yards per carry. They were more physical. They controlled the line of scrimmage, and North Dakota State had no answers defensively for what the Hawks wanted to do. Coach, what was your biggest takeaway from North Dakota's massive upset over North Dakota State?
Almost 6 yards of rush. And you would think that stat would be for the other team. And it was the team that no one saw coming. And you go back, B, and you look at the stats in this game, and you're like, okay, what happened? And I go back to what you said there just a few minutes ago. That opening kickoff, I think, took all the jitters away. And, UND was like, hey, we can play with these guys. And at that point, they were in for a fight. And I just don't think they ever matched the, like you said, the physicality of Indy. They just weren't scared of them. And I was just really, really surprised because, I've always said that it's a proud program. They've got something to prove. They still have that bitter taste from last year. And they just got it taken to them. They got it to them on Saturday. And I don't know now if that program is sitting there second guessing themselves at this point, at this juncture in the season, because they're supposed to be rolling right now at this point.
Yeah, I listen, I'm okay to say I was wrong. I was very hesitant on North Dakota just because I haven't seen it. They had a bunch of wins over overmatched programs. They had the FBS game against Boise, and then they really weren't. I mean, the score looks maybe relatively competitive, but South Dakota State just handled them. And so I was like, what is this team really and truly? And this weekend was a big proving point for me. They answered every question I have. They have the running backs. They have the wide receivers. Listen, Tommy Schuster, did everything right. He didn't have to do a lot, but when he had the ball in his hands, he made the right play consistently and generated some explosive plays. Man, give it up for, was it Luke Skopna? 100-yard kickoff return, rushing touchdown, and receiving touchdown. 3 touchdowns in a huge game. Zybar, their running back, 156, 3 touchdowns, 9 yards per carry. He was unstoppable. And then the defense, too, holding North Dakota State to less than 4 yards per carry as a team. Coach, when I look at North Dakota State right now, just kind of flipping it to the other side, I don't see a true deep threat for them. I don't see a guy on the outside that you can trust to go make a play right now. Now, Zach Mathis has shown moments like last week against Missouri State, but he hasn't shown it in the big game. And I don't know if they have the guy at running back either, to be honest with you. Tamarick Williams is good, but does his ceiling kind of reach historically what North Dakota State had in the running back room? And I just don't know if the depth is there either behind them. And then you look, me and you ate our words early in the season, Coach, when we kind of were critical about Cam Miller, this Cole Payton, discussion.
Yep.
Neither of them look like they really have it either. Like, I know Cam Miller's won a national championship. I understand that, but I think he had a lot of surrounding talent. I still don't know if I hate to say this, but I don't know if he's a national championship type of guy. Is he a Gronowski? Is he like this level of quarterback we saw in the Easton Stick, the Carson Wentz, that level of quarterback? I don't know right now. And it's because of games like this. It's because of games like against South Dakota State last year in the Natty. I don't see that in them. And then also on top of that, this might be the worst offensive line North Dakota State's had in a long time, just in terms of overall talent, continuity, chemistry. Coach, I have to ask it. Everyone's been talking about it. Did this loss to you signal the end of the North Dakota State dynasty?
I'm not ready to pull the curtain on that just yet. Now, I do think they've got to go back and figure out what they want to do. Their calling card has been the run game. They road grade you up front. They have the guys in the back, like you said, that they can turn around and hand it to 20, 30 times a game. And then they've always had guys on the outside, so to speak, that once you decide you've got to try to stop this run, that they can play action you and be able to go over the top. They hadn't really been able to get that run game off like they have in the past. And I think that hurts them in their pass game, because their pass game is relatively play action ball. If nobody's scared of that run anymore, now you've got to go back and kind of figure out some things to help your quarterbacks, to help your receivers that aren't the big play type guys. And I think that's one of those things that they've got to figure out as a program. Like, okay, where are we and where do we want to go from here? Because right now, people are just going to stack that box and say, hey, beat us if you can.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Okay, I'm kind of with you. I'm not ready to say it's officially dead, but, man, it's teetering right now. If things
one's scared of them anymore.
No. Any given weekend now. Because, I look at their schedule, Coach. I think, obviously, Western Illinois, Murray State don't really spark fear in anyone. Those are kind of like the bottom feeders of the conference. Western Illinois is going to the OVC next year anyway. So they'll probably be sitting at 6 wins in 2 weeks, 6-2. But then, Coach, the final 3 games at South Dakota State,
trouble,
Southern Illinois,
could be trouble,
and then at Northern Iowa, which, they haven't played well, but that's always a tricky game, especially in the dome for them. And Cedar Falls is a problem for usually for Northern Iowa. Man,
and they hadn't been really good on the road.
No, not really. And this was really one of the first real road tests for them. And then really and truly, you look at their resume. I think their resume looked a lot stronger 2 weeks ago, because you saw Eastern Washington trending up. You saw Central Arkansas trending up. And I still think Central Arkansas is a great win, because they're really rolling right now. Oh, yeah, over in the UAC. But that Eastern Washington win doesn't look as good now, as they've kind of been struggling recently. I want to say they're 2-4, 2-5 right now. They're not looking great. So there's a point right now where, Coach, North Dakota State's going to be playing in the first round of the playoffs most likely this year for the first time in a long time. They're probably not going to be a seed. They're not going to have home field, and we know how big.
Probably on the road.
Yeah, so you're kind of looking, you kind of lose the home field advantage of the Fargo Dome, which has been huge for them throughout this championship run. So it's going to be a real test for North Dakota State to really make a strong run. But I agree that it's probably not over. When you make comparisons at previous dynasties, whether it's FCS, FBS, I mean, there's been you look at the Alabama dynasty. I mean, what would you say the Alabama dynasty was? Because there were years where they didn't win the title. Auburn got one in there. Ohio State got one in there. Florida State got one in there. But then Bama would win it every third year, every second year. So
it's still within reach.
Right.
It's still within reach.
Yeah. So I think North Dakota State is struggling right now. I'm going to be interested. They can't. When I look at the future of the program, Ince can't suffer a first round playoff loss. He's got to get past at least the first round, which I think they can. Like Dan said, they'll probably buy a home field advantage in the first round. But the problem is, what happens if you have to go to Bozeman in the second round? What happens if, what if you got to go back to Brookings in the second round and go play South Dakota State again, or Montana and Missoula, or whoever else might be a seed? So it's going to be a tough road. But I do agree the dynasty is probably not over per se. But man, if things don't turn around this year, next year, then especially with how South Dakota State's trending up,
man, everybody around them,
right? Yeah, because I mean, Montana State rolling with Vegan right now, and I think they have a lot of potential in that team. So we'll have to see there. But Coach, our HBCU game of the week, man, I don't really want to listen. We both picked Tennessee State to beat Norfolk. It was a big game. Draylon Ellis, that defense forced some turnovers. Bryce Phillips was a problem at corner. But Coach, it was the post game. Eddie George really kind of questioned his fans. They had about, I want to say it was just under 14,000 show up to Nissan. And here's the quote, Coach. I don't know if you got to see it. He said, "I'm hoping that next week we'll have the same crowd that was here today. It was great. I would have loved for it to have been packed for the entire game, not just up to halftime when the bands left. But we've got a special group, and I want our fan base to really embrace that. I don't know if they really love football. I just don't know. I've been here for 3 years, and there's only been a couple games they've come to that many people and have been excited. I don't know if they truly love the game because we are winning." Coach, just from a coach's perspective, your thoughts on that?
It's tough. I feel him. If it was reversed, I think if they were on the downside of things, I think he'd be catching a lot of heat. They're on the upside of things, so I understand, where he's coming from, how he feels about it, and I'm sure he didn't, he's not looking around during the game. I'm sure someone said something to him after the game, but it's always tough, and that's a very, 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 very slippery slope. But he's Eddie George. He has a great thing going right now. I just truly think that NFL stadium presents a problem in itself. And I think that's one thing they've got to find a way around, because even if you have 14,000 in there, it's still going to look incredibly empty, just because of how large it is. And, I think that they've got to find a way to have that happy medium to where, okay, when it's packed, it's packed. But also, he plays within a schedule, within a conference that his fan base, they know where they are. They know who they are. So he's right. You guys have got to come out to more of that, because they have a great thing going right now, and going down the stretch, they're going to need the home field advantage. So I agree with him.
Yeah, and then especially at the end of the quote, he also said that he said, "I would really love for them to embrace us, support us, no matter who we play." That was his key, is that it doesn't matter who is playing. He was like, it doesn't have to be another HBCU. And then he also kind of went to the tailgate thing. He was like, it doesn't always have to be a party with liquor, wings, all that in the parking lot. I get it. I've been there. But he said, if you're a real fan, come support Tennessee State, the student athletes, and we'll party at the end after we win, which I think he wrapped it up good. I get it, because, Coach, well, we both have been, whether it's at the FCS. Listen, me and you were coaching, but I know you felt it. The energy at that Soul Bowl last year,
crazy.
If that energized your team, you guys as coaches at Alcorn, it does it at every level. Having a big listen, when South Dakota State played Montana State, for the student section to be filled an hour before the game, doing the blackout, yelling at the Montana State players, is different. But I do agree, and I've talked about this probably for a year or two on the show, even before we started having the coaches corner. Off-campus stadiums are always
Tricky.
tricky, especially in big cities, because in a big city, because if
It's a lot of
have
stuff
you
to
ever,
do.
have you been to Nissan?
I drove past it.
Yeah, man. I mean,
Going somewhere else.
it's literally like across
Downtown.
the bridge from downtown. So you're
Downtown.
not probably
Yeah.
gonna, get the local fans to come tune into an FCS game. So, and I think when you look at their attendance, it's always better at Hale. Now, I did talk to some people. There are some like structural issues with Hale that they're trying to get fixed, try to get
I
funding
get it.
for. We know that's a whole another conversation regarding the HBCU aspect of this topic. So hopefully they get that done. I know they have a lot of big plans to expand and kind of renovate that stadium, and they're kind of forced to have to play at Nissan for right now. But still, I think the on-campus environment is different. Coach, I mean, listen, both of us have been there. It's different waking up as a student, being able to walk across campus, be able to just walk to the stadium from your dorm, interact with your fellow classmates, all this stuff. It's a different thing than having to get in the car and drive 20-30 minutes to a
Across town.
stadium that's not yours.
Yeah, across town. And it presents a lot of different, challenges, like you said. I mean, not all students have cars. Not everybody has access to be able to get over there. But like you were saying, that game versus Jackson here last year, to come out of the tunnel for pregame warmups and have the stadium filled, it does something different for your team. Homecoming, to have the stadium filled before kickoff, it actually does something to you. But then, like you said, we also woke up that morning on campus and had a walkthrough, and you could smell the barbecue, you could hear the music across campus, as to where if we had to drive to wherever, you don't get that feel. And a lot of times in that sector of things, a lot of people just come for the what do you want to call it? The fandism outside of the stadium. So, you run that, but if it's on campus, I think it's just totally different. And, being from Tampa, USF runs into the same problem, playing in Tampa Stadium, and that's a group of 5. So depending on who they're playing, it might not be full, but, you're playing 20 minutes away from campus. So, that's going to always, I think, present a problem.
I get the fans' perspective too, because at the end of the day, not everyone's like me and you. Not everyone's like the people in the chat. Because I know there's some diehard fans who watch the show. They're not going to go watch football just to watch football. So I get that argument, because at the end of the day, you do need proof of concept. And to be honest with you, until this year,
it's been up. It's been down.
There's not been a lot of fun. Like,
right.
I went to that game last year against SEMO, and no one wants to go watch you get beat 42-0 by SEMO.
Yeah,
that's not on the bingo card for people how they want to spend their Saturdays, man. So I get it, and I do think it's a little bit lazy, because I've seen a lot of people kind of take the angle of like, okay, well, Tennessee State deserves this because they're not in the HBCU conference. And I just feel like that's such a lazy argument to me, because they've been in the OVC forever.
I mean, that's their conference. That's where they've been.
So that shouldn't be a thing. And it's just like, everyone's like, oh, well, maybe if you did this, and it's like, Eddie George isn't in control of what conference they're in. Like, the head coach of the football team doesn't, he has nothing to do with that. But you look at their recruiting, coach is taking off. They're recruiting better and better. Eddie George understands that attendance, that fan engagement, that all plays a part in recruiting.
Yep,
it matters. And so you've got to be frustrating for him that everyone's putting him on the hot seat. Fans are like, why aren't you winning? Why aren't you doing this? And he's winning now. He's doing everything you're doing, and he's asking you for your support. And then you move the goalpost and say, oh, well, maybe if you were in the SWAC, we'd come. It's like, what kind of fan? What are we doing here? So it's like a weird argument, a layered argument, and I get it. But at the end of the day, I think Eddie George is right in terms of, man, they've had their best starts since, I think, 2016. They're in consideration for the playoffs right now if they win out. Man, Tennessee State hasn't been this good in a long time. And I do think the fans, especially the alumni, man, they got to get behind this team and start supporting more.
Yeah, and it goes back to, and I'll end it on this, like you said, nobody wants to bring, whether it's unofficial or official, recruits to campus, and have those kids show up to a less than half full stadium. When you know those kids are tripping other places that you're going against. So, you go to Tennessee State, and I use them because it's his argument, and you go there and there's only 8,000. And then you come to these people and you come to a game and then there's 20 plus thousand in the stands and another 15 outside. That weighs into what happens in the recruiting aspect. So I agree with him on that. But at the end of the day, you got to put the product on the field consistently. And then, as the old movie said, you build it, they will come. We hope.
Yeah, exactly. And I agree, D-Lob. I do agree because D-Lob said that what he does, the only thing he's concerned about is if Tennessee State starts not to win, that excuse will kind of turn and be like, well, if you all showed up, we'd be winning. So I do agree. He can't blame the attendance for not winning. I do agree that. And he hasn't done that yet. But I understand, like, your concern that it could evolve into that. So I do agree that as long as he keeps winning, he has a valid argument. And at the end of the day, all the people who are saying it's because you're not in an HBCU conference, you played an HBCU this weekend. So what was the issue this weekend? And it was
to use that as fuel.
Coach, we talked about it this weekend. The number one band in the country, supposedly. So there was no.
Got to use it as fuel, man.
Yeah,
use it as fuel, baby. Us against the world.
But Coach, we got to shift to our HBCU segment, man. Listen, the best way to put it is, if you had homecoming this weekend, you probably wish you would have moved it because unless you were playing Lincoln, then that was a free win. But SWAC chaos this weekend, Coach. Jackson, Grambling entered the weekend. I mean, listen, firmly in the conference, in the divisional races in the SWAC. And these schools at Alabama, they were ready for chaos this weekend. A&M pulls off a stunner 45-24 dominating victory over Grambling State, and Alabama State shocked Jackson at home 24-19 this weekend. Coach, we'll start over in the hole with Grambling. I mean, Xavier Lankford said, listen, y'all gave me the starting position. It's mine now.
And before we get to that, I got to ask you a question. This Lincoln school, where is this Lincoln school from?
California.
They play in the conference every other week. Who's footing that bill?
So they don't have if I'm not mistaken, they don't have a home stadium. They just travel all year. Like the NCAA doesn't even recognize them as like an official. They're not even like NAIA or nothing.
Right. So the stats don't count. Which is why I don't think we would ever play them, because your stats don't count, blah, 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 blah. But who's footing the bill? They're not going back to Cali every week and then coming back out this way, are they? Like, that is absolutely crazy.
Well, since they're a smaller program, all the schools that play them pay them to come.
We can't do that.
So okay, so this year, so they're playing teams like College of Idaho, Adams State, or like their normal teams. Coach, they play Cal Poly, Lamar, Texas Southern. They play Tennessee State this weekend. Kennesaw State, who is a damn near FBS team, which is insane. They scheduled them. Southern Utah and FAMU.
Southern Utah. Wow. So who did they play this week? You said Tennessee State?
Yeah.
Surely they didn't go back to California, right?
No, they definitely did.
Anyway, let me get back on track. That just
Coach, listen, I burned the showdown when I heard FAM schedule this game. I burned the showdown. I mean, there's no way.
I remember.
At the end of the day, there are D2 HBCU teams you could schedule. There are just D2 teams in general you could schedule before you get to Lincoln, CA. They have 500 students.
Like, how do you find them? But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But yeah, that game, man, 17-17 at the half, and then just got totally out of hand. Middle of the third going into the fourth. And it was kind of funny because I felt like going into it that this might be the other way. And then as you know, you get into it, and XL just kind of went crazy there for a minute, man. And I don't even think the plan was to run him early. I think they just found that, and then they stayed with it. So, hats off to Coach Maynard and his staff for finding something that worked and staying with it. 9 of 22, 127 yards. Got to get a little bit better in that aspect. But, I think this game and the one that we're about to talk about again is shaped up for next week, well, this week, to make that classic something that's going to be something to, really see.
Yeah, and I agree. Listen, Hitman in the comments. So what happened with FAMU, Coach, if you don't know, South Carolina State pulled out of the scheduled game like right before the season. So there was no, like, they had to go get somebody. So I give FAMU a pass, but Southern, Texas Southern, y'all aren't off the hook. Cal Poly, Southern Utah, you guys are still on the hook for that. But getting back to this game, Coach Maynard, we talked, was it at the end of our last show where we talked about E-Rob and Maynard, if they both lose this weekend, how did we get game, how the tables turn very quickly in the SWAC, man. Now you're looking at that game kind of, well, especially for A&M, is how they keep themselves in the SWAC East race.
Yeah.
Because now if they beat FAM, they're right there. It's just insane how quickly it turned. But listen, you got to give Xavier Langford his props. He even got a helmet sticker on College Football Final on ESPN this weekend for his performance. I mean, Coach, 193, 2 touchdowns, averaging 12 yards per carry, and still passed for over 100 yards and a touchdown. And then you got Eaglin going for 97 and 2 touchdowns. Anytime you allow the team you're facing to run for 336, 5 touchdowns, and average almost 8 yards per carry,
it's gonna be a rough out.
It's tough. Man, you can't do anything. And then on top of that, too, I'll be honest, Miles Crawley came in 2 weeks ago and was balling. I mean, in Walter Payton conversations, and I don't think he played a bad game. It wasn't super efficient, though, and he had that one big turnover that really hurt Grambling. At the end of the day, man, you need more in a game like this. And then you have all this talent at the running back spot, and they really kind of struggled to establish anything explosive in the rushing attack. And when the team across from you is putting up 7 yards a pop, you got to get more out of your offense in that moment. Defensively, though, for A&M, they made key stops in big moments. They might have gave up a good bit of yards, but they just kind of played that bend, don't break approach where they just made that they kept you out of the end zone. And then you're looking at Hugh Jackson now. God, that's too bad. Listen, that's 2 tough losses to take back to back because it was a competitive game on the road against you guys, and you failed to kind of close that one out, and then you come home for homecoming against a team who was kind of reeling, and you give it away at home in really unimpressive fashion. You're looking at Grambling now kind of moving forward, and it's just like, what is the ceiling for this team now when 2 weeks ago they were in full control of the West, and everyone was like, oh, this team probably is going to get to the championship. And now they're sitting there behind multiple teams in the division.
Yeah. And, MC had two big turnovers. They had the pick and then the fumble. And when you're at home and you're trying to hold on to, a game and get a win, you can't have those kind of turnovers. And, to sit and watch a team run the ball like that is just, that's death by 1,000 paper cuts. And then, we've talked about this on several shows with the timing rules. You're watching this, and now you just start to press a little bit because the next time you get the ball that you need to score. And if you got to give it back and you're having trouble stopping them with the run, it's going to make for a long day for you. And I think that's just kind of what happened in the second half. And, kind of caused him to press a little bit, may have caused the play caller to press a little bit. But again, 463 total yards, 336 on the ground. That's death by 1,000 paper cuts right there, man.
That you just feel so helpless as a defense at that point.
Nothing you can do.
I mean, and then 2 turnovers in Alabama A&M territory when you're giving up what you are defensively just can't happen. And at the end of the day, we all knew the weakness for Grambling was the defense. I think Hugh did a good job addressing the needs offensively. You went out and got Miles Crawley, who's turned out. Your running back room has some talent. Offensive line slowly maturing. Lyndon Rash is that guy at wide receiver, and you have a few other weapons. But defensively, man, they don't have a championship defense right now. And when you go up against the better teams offensively, or someone gets really hot against you offensively, it costs you in ways like this, man. And it just, you fix the offense, Hugh. Now it's time. You got to go find a defense for next year, or you can't win a championship like that.
Well, and you can't win a championship, turn it over 3 times, and then you can't have over 100 yards and penalties. That's going to hurt you every time, every freaking time.
And then I still, look, Coach, I'll be honest. I watched this game just absolute dumbfounded. I mean, Jackson falling to Alabama State at homecoming, and Alabama State, I don't necessarily understand it. 241 yards of total offense.
I kept waiting for an update. Like, this can't be right.
Well, at the end of the day, it really hurt Jack. I mean, you got to give Alabama State credit for this, Coach. Every time Jackson gave them a short field,
they capitalized.
Alabama State made them pay. And I think really and truly, when you turn the football over like Jackson was, because I mean, they had 3 fumbles this weekend, and you were giving them they had those 2 fourth-quarter touchdowns. You gave them the ball inside your territory. Man, that's all that's literally all you needed if you're Alabama State. And then on top of that, too, it is time to give this man his flowers. And I need the SWAC to apologize immediately to that guy number 1 in that black and gold, because it is absolutely ridiculous that Colton Adams was not the SWAC Defensive Player of the Year this preseason. And he is on track right now to be the postseason Defensive Player of the Year. Coach, 14 tackles, 10 solo, 2 tackles for loss, and half a sack, and was everywhere on I mean, every picture they released of the game that Jackson had the ball offensively, Bubba was in the picture. He was everywhere. They couldn't block him.
He's playing sideline to sideline. Anything in the box, he's attached to it. And it's funny that you say that, because we were just looking at the stats, and I think he's like 3rd overall right now, or 4th in total tackles. And it's one of those things where, okay, next game he'll be back to the number 1 spot. If he continues to go at this rate, it's like he's not giving anybody else an opportunity to make the tackles. He sees it, he's attacking it right now. And then you go back again, like you said, you go back and you look at the disparity in yardage, man. I just, again, I know 3 turnovers, where they turned it over at, but you're not supposed to lose this game with these type of numbers. But football is a funny thing about it, funny sport. And when you turn it over short field and they're turning those things into 6 and not 3, you're putting yourself in a tough spot. And again, hats off. We talked about this game. Would it have the same intensity now that there's a new coach on the other sideline? I think it still had the same intensity. It was great to see that these kids came out and competed. And I just need you to find out for me, because I've been lost in this. What's going on with RP over at Jackson? Like, is he hurt? What's going on with RP in the offensive game plan? And I understand that you have settled into, we are a ground and pound team. I understand that. But you've got RP out there, man. I think he bails you out of a lot of stuff if you give him the opportunity. I think he had 1 catch for
-1 yards.
-1. I had it for 1. He had 1 catch for, -1 yard. RP's better than that, man. And I don't know if he's hurt or, what's going on with it, but, you've got to give that guy an opportunity to bail you out of some of those situations, I think.
Yeah, he's kind of fallen. Like, it just seems like he's kind of falling out of the game plan. At the end of the day, someone else has to step up. I thought Fabian McCray did a pretty good job this weekend, kind of taking that lead role, but I still don't think he offers you the upside that Rico does in terms of an overall wide receiver. No. And then on top of that, too, I mean, Irv Mulligan getting hurt midway through this game, I think that's something that I got to monitor with Jackson, because at the end of the day, you could say whatever you want about their roster, how much talent they have, etc. Irv Mulligan has been the best player. he's been the best player for Jackson, and it hasn't even really been close this year.
Yeah.
And so I think Desmond Moultrie did a good job of kind of stepping up. He averaged like 6 yards per carry, had a big touchdown. But
nothing against him, but he ain't that guy. He's
not Irv Mulligan. And I think Ahmad Miller, showed flashes this year, but he didn't have a great game. I think JD's still trying to work his way back from injury. We'll see kind of what percentage he's at this weekend against Valley. But I look at this game, and at the end of the day, it came down to two things. One, the Alabama State defense was making key plays, man. You could say, yes, Jackson fumbled and all this, but someone had to force the fumbles, and someone had to make those key stops, and then they just took advantage of every mistake Jackson made. They took advantage of. And so that you got to give him props for that, man. And I think E-Rob was motivated. I think he heard the talk kind of surrounding this Alabama State program. And at the end of the day, regardless if the former coach was there or not, he wanted to make a statement. He wanted to get that win on their homecoming. He told them to schedule it.
He said,
and I mean, listen, he did his thing, and you got to give him props. I still think the quarterback situation for State is a little iffy. I don't think either guy looked really good. I want to see. They used him in limited action. I just want to see what Let would do if you gave him a full game. I know Damon Stewart's shown a little bit of promise, especially against FAMU, but just give Let just give him a game to see, because it can't hurt. It can't be any worse than what we've already seen. Just, can he do anything if you just give him the reins? He knows he's not going to get pulled. Let him go out there and play, because you've got to get it figured out before the Classic. And that's just one of the question marks I kind of have about this team. Is I think defensively they're really good. They have some running backs. Jawan Howell showed flashes. AJ Gates had a big game receiving and rushing. I just want to see, can they figure out the quarterback spot? And I do want to say one thing, is I've seen it on multiple other platforms, and I see it in the chat now. Faking an injury is not a penalty.
No, and it's nothing you can do about it.
No.
So it's one of those things of where the refs are caught, teams are caught. Not saying that it's a good thing, not saying it's a bad thing, but I just can't. As it was put to us, they can't judge it as officials because that just goes into a whole nother thing. Someone goes down, you got to stop the game, and you got to give the people time to come and see about them, regardless of what the situation is. You can't say one way or another. It's just part of it, and there's no way that they could actually figure out how to govern it, because you can't tell someone when they are hurt when they're not hurt. And before we move on, I want to make sure that I am not saying that anyone is less talented or more talented than anybody else. I'm not saying anything about the kids. I'm just saying that guy that runs the ball with the dreads out of his helmet is a different dude. And those other guys, they're not him. And with RP, I'm saying it's nothing against those other receivers. That kid is special to the point that I think he gives you an opportunity every time he touches the ball, whether it's take it 95 yards or take a 5-yard hitch. So I want to make sure we clear that up. And I would definitely, you can't phase him out of it, because I think he's just that talented of a kid. You got to find different ways to get RP involved. But you get to the end of the season and you got one game left. Don't worry about trying to figure out how to put RP in the game plan. Just let RP sit, play your last game, and we'll be fine.
Yeah, and I agree, Emmett. So if a player does go down with an injury or whatever it may be, they do have to miss one play minimum.
Yeah, he has to come out.
But I do agree that could change it if that player had to miss that series going down. That could, be a thing, because if they're actually hurt, they're probably missing more than one play anyway. It's just the NCAA can't. Listen, there's no way to judge a cramp versus an actual injury, and some players play through the pain. There's a whole, like Edwin said, there's too many legal implications for that rule. And Coach, I don't know if you can answer this, but I'll give my thoughts. Jawan asked, should Jackson, should they put Rico in the slot in different packages to kind of get him involved more, because they've kind of played him on the outside for the most part? It would move, like for you, let's just take it with your offense, your best wide receiver, would you ever move him to the slot to get him involved in more packages, get him more opportunities, maybe in a better matchup in the slot?
I definitely think they should every game except for their last ball game. In their last ball game, they should probably play him at tight end. But if it's me, I definitely want to have different ways to be able to get my home run hitter the ball. I want to be able to get my home run hitter the different touches. So I would definitely try to be creative and find ways to get him the ball just because he, to me, is that dynamic.
I agree. That's and Timothy, man, you are on point with it. That's exactly what Missouri does with Luther Burden. That guy does not come off the field. He can play the X. He can play the Y. He can play the slot. They'll put him at running back. Yep. Luther Burden's on the field, and the ball is going to touch his hands multiple times.
You have to
every time.
You have to count for him.
And really and truly, if you have that guy, I won't say it for bigger guys that don't have the twitch. But, man, that's why I love what the 49ers were doing with Deebo Samuel. If he's that guy, man, I'll put him in the backfield. Am I going to hand the ball off to him? Maybe, maybe not. But he's going to be on the field. He's going to
account for him.
Y'all are going to know where he is because if that one play you don't account for him is when we're going to go to him.
To the house we go. Yeah, definitely that. So we're on the same page.
And I agree, Chief. You have that Jackson came into the year with the best tight end in the SWAC and DJ Stevens. I haven't seen him since week 1.
He was another one I had a question about, just as far as his health, because you saw, I think in the beginning, you saw him and Rico high usage very early, and I think it just kind of went. And again, I don't know inside that room what's going on. Whatever. But I just know that when they were high usage guys, that they were very, very explosive with the ball. But, every game except for that last one, they definitely should try. But that last game, probably not try so hard to get them the ball.
I love it. But the final point before we move on to wide receiver, the fly zone wide receiver of the week for you. Put some respect on Bubba's name. That's the final takeaway. I'm tired of the Colton Adams disrespecting the SWAC, and we're gonna fight that on this show until the end of time, until he gets his proper respect. But Coach, it was a big week for wide receivers. I mean,
man,
listen, it's like we started doing this award. And the wide receivers that were watching kind of sitting around like a big wide receiver group chat, and they said, "We're gonna make them. I want the gloves. I want the recognition." But Coach, man, week 7 fly zone wide receiver of the week, man. Who you got?
Man, it was so many impressive performances, man. Me and you kind of talk back and forth through text. I want to give a shout out to a couple of the honorable mentions. Logan up in New Hampshire, man, went 9 for 144 with 2 touchdowns. That's absolutely crazy. Paxton went 10 for 185 for Dartmouth, absolutely freaking crazy. My man, they said, now legend has it, AJ Barber left a tutoring session to go play in a football game, and he went 8 for 142 with a touchdown with Princeton. Absolutely crazy. Joe Gillette had a day for Maine, 8 for 102. Chisholm, 13 for 161, Eastern Washington. You know how that game went. And I kind of went against a rule. I felt like the fly zone guy had to make it scary hour in a for the defense in a winning situation. But when you talk about what Mr. James did and how they came back and ended up losing that game the way they lost it, fly zone receiver of the week, Cheatham James, 15, 206, 1 touchdown, long of 65. Average was out of this world. Again, these guys are putting up 200 yards of receiving, and there's so many things that go into these guys having these opportunities, man. And again, I went against my rule. But Mr. James is the fly zone receiver of the week, 15, 206, 1 touchdown, Idaho State, with a host of freaking honorable mention guys, man. Guys, keep doing your thing. Keep doing your thing. We see you.
Man, James had really and truly without him, I don't know if they pull off that comeback. I
Yeah.
mean, really and truly, what that 41-14. He just started putting on a show in that fourth quarter, man. So shout out to Cheatham James, man. Graphic will be out tomorrow. We'll get a hold of him, man. Get him some gloves. Coach, the crazy part about him, he's a true sophomore.
Young kid, man. These young boys out here doing these things, man, and their quarterbacks are young. So the upside of all of this stuff is absolutely crazy, man. But what AJ Barber did, man, over there at Princeton, man, hats off to him, man. Keep tutoring and keep catching that pill, baby. We see you.
Coach, shifting to our final segment, man. Winners, losers, man. We'll start here, man. Just give me your winners, man. We'll go with mine, and then we'll hit losers next, man. Who were your biggest winners of week 7 across the FCS?
Man, my neck of the woods, I think it has to be both the Alabama schools. We talked about, if they didn't show up and have good showings this week, what implications that could have on that Magic City Classic. They both showed up in dominant fashion, which is going to make for a very interesting matchup with those two. Shout out to Mississippi State, Valley, all that stuff, man. Honorable mention for the winner as well, getting their first win on their homecoming for them. And I just think Montana, man, you can't say enough about that win that they were able to pull off in the fashion that they were able to pull it off in, man. It was painful because I was ready to make a true push for my boys to be one in the country. But yeah, Montana, big winner.
Man, shout out to them. I agree. I'll start there. Valley, a dominant first win, man. They rolled through UAPB on their homecoming. I'd specifically, listen, Ty Williams, my bad. Ty Williams, a quarterback, man, true freshman out of Aliceville, Alabama. I've kind of been hyping him up on the show. Had a ridiculous game, man. 265, 3 touchdowns, no turnovers. Coach, this year he's seen limited action, 649 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, 0 turnovers for the true freshman.
0 turnovers. And we're talking about true freshman. We're talking about somebody that was playing on Friday nights a year ago.
Yeah, you got to give him his props. I think I agree. Montana was a huge winner for me. I think you went from, really and truly the whole country criticizing every move they did to now being a top 10 team, competing for a seed. Yeah, I like the both Alabama schools as well. And just kind of looking around South Dakota too, it kind of got lost because of all the chaos. They escape with the win over Youngstown State. Aiden Bowman continues to shine. South Dakota jumps up. They're number 3 in my top 25 right now. That team is rolling, and they kind of went from 3 wins last year. Still got a young team, and right now they're right in the thick of it in terms of the MVFC race. I can't wait to see kind of how that conference race shakes out with them down the stretch. But Coach, losers of the week, man, I'll start it here. Prairie View A&M. What are we doing? 30-0 against Houston Christian.
Yeah.
Coach, we talk about it all the time. The SWAC out of conference struggles. It's getting comical at some point.
But this is one that was doable.
That's what I'm saying. What? Listen, I'll say this. Shout out to my guy Braxton, head coach over at Houston Christian, came over from Campbell. Listen, he's doing his thing. Houston Christian, I don't know if Coach, I really don't. They're 3-4 this year. I don't know if they've won 3 games in the past 6 years at Houston Christian.
Yeah.
And he's already got a win over Southeastern Louisiana, a 30-0 win over PV. Coach, it wasn't even close. Coach, I want to listen to this. I don't think people understand how much, Coach, 30 first downs for Houston Christian to 6 for PV. Crazy. 246 rushing yards for Houston Christian, 20 for PV on 22 attempts. Had 90 passing yards for PV to 200 for Houston Christian. Coach, they got outgained 445 to 110.
Again, it was one of those things where you're looking at the stats and you're like, okay, this has got to be wrong. They just didn't put them in. 1 of 10 on third down. And 4 yards per pass, less than a yard per rush. I'm like, okay, they're playing with us. They took the red shirts. That's the only way that this is explainable. And this was like a doable game, one of those games that I was like, PV will get this one. They'll get it rolling. They're going to make it really tough. And I just, I don't know what happened.
What happened is, listen, excuse my, they got the ass whooped.
Not taking anything away from Houston Christian, but like, man, I was expecting so much more.
Well, Coach, before the season, I'm trying to find like Houston Christian's like football record, but I mean, the SWAC has won what, like 2 out of conference games this year?
Yeah.
At the D1 level, like McNeese and South Carolina State. If I'm missing one, correct me, but I think that's it. Yeah, you guys beat McNeese. Jackson beat South Carolina State. Off the top of my head, I don't think there's a single other SWAC program that has a D1 out of conference win right now.
It's crazy, man, because again, like, no disrespect, but this was one that was doable.
Yeah, and I see listen. So supposedly, I don't know if it was him or I don't know if it was Bubba or the fans, but they were blaming penalties. I'm sorry, you had 110 yards of total offense. I don't want to see a single thing about penalties.
It's 10 for 100 versus 6 for 45. You both had 2 turnovers. Again, it would be one of those things that I would just have to watch. But I mean, you're a running ball club and you mustered up less than a yard per carry. I don't know, man.
Yeah, I'm not letting you lean on the ref. I'm sorry. I'm not gonna let you lean on the ref excuse on that one. I mean, you got handled. But in terms of another loser, man, I hate to say this because I was right. Oh my God, this was my team. Albany losing to New Hampshire on the road. Listen, it was a tough road game, but gosh, man, that was one you had to have. New Hampshire was reeling, back-to-back losses, and you just didn't get it done, man. I mean, you really struggled defensively. So I'm gonna give one to them. And then also Elon, man.
They have been rolling.
They went 3-0 over that first 3 games. They were riding high. Central catches them. Then they get shut out by Villanova this weekend, 21-0. It's just kind of all been downhill. And then the final one, Coach, this one's obvious. Well, no, there's the last 2 are obvious. North Dakota State, obviously. We've already kind of broke that one down.
Yeah.
And Howard.
Whoa. I forgot about them. Yeah. They took Howard
went to Harvard and got beat 48-7, and Harvard led 48-0 until like the final 2 or 3 minutes.
And we said that this one could be close as far as taking the spread, but
listen, everyone talks about how good the MEAC performs out of conference, which they have been. I don't want to say they haven't. Listen, I don't know if it's the Ivy League teams have mind control, but those Ivy League teams have been smacking around the MEAC teams. I mean, Yale beat Morgan State by 40?
Yeah.
And then this one's 48-7. I mean, listen, the MEAC teams have mind control over the MEAC right now. Listen, we got to get NCCU against some Ivy League teams because someone's got to get a lick back sooner or later, but it has not been good Ivy League versus MEAC, man.
So Coach, 5-0, baby.
Hey, they're rolling. They look good. This weekend will be a good test against Princeton as conference play kind of starts rolling. But I'm interested to see what Harvard looks like, man. Listen, they look good. Charles DePrima is a problem. And then Isaiah Abbey this weekend, Coach, 7.5 yards per carry, 123 touchdowns as a backup running back. Listen, man, shout out to him. He had a big game. But Coach, man, give me your losers for week 7.
Got to be Graham over here in my neck of the woods. Graham and I think Jackson, as far as those two, because I think it's tied together. Graham, because you were right there, like you said a couple weeks ago, cream of the crop, in control of your own. I say Jackson because they had the opportunity to stay right there in the thick of things for the East, and you let one slip away at home after you clearly dominated the game stat-wise, but turnovers came back to get you. So I would definitely take that. Those two from my neck of the woods. NDSU, we could do a whole breakdown on that one there. I just think that was, a serious letdown there. And then when you get to, again, my neck of the woods, PV, man, I kept waiting on those stats to be updated throughout the day before we got to the show. And it's like, no, this is the real stats. It's the real stats. I mean, I don't know. Again, maybe something's going on. Couple injuries, whatever. Not sure. And then last one, man, and it's only because my guy Ty Mercer, man. What are we doing?
Get that man the ball,
Mercer. Come on, man. What are we doing? But that's it for me.
Yeah. Listen, well, we texted about this. Oh, man. Number 13, you got to get the ball. Just throw it to him. It's some like make them triple team him if you have to. He should have 10 plus targets every game, and that should be the script. When you get on the field, you get that opening kickoff. It's to 13 as many times as humanly possible. That's the game plan if you're Mercer. But man, Coach, wild week 7, man. Week 8, Coach, is going to be a huge week. We got number 2 versus number 3 this weekend. Montana State traveling over to Sac State. You got that Furman Western Carolina matchup we've all been looking for, and South Dakota State on the road against Southern Illinois, a top 12 matchup, another big test for the Jacks. Listen, and then on Thursday night, Morgan State, North Carolina Central, finally opening up MEAC play. I can't wait to see it, man. I'm excited.
I'm ready to see that defense, man, versus QB1, man. I'm ready to see that.
And they're both going to be well rested after bye weeks. I mean, listen, it's going to be an intense game on Thursday night, man. I'll be traveling up to North Carolina this weekend, man. I'll be at Western Carolina, Furman. I can't wait to be at that one, man. That one's going to be a hell of a game, and I'm hoping my guy Desmond Reed is back from injury this weekend.
Would you say the Central game right now, Monday at 6:12, Central Morgan game, is this for all the marbles?
Because of Morgan's quarterback, no, I still think Howard has a shot, but I'll be honest with you right now, I don't see anyone catching Central in the MEAC. I just haven't, because everyone's been so inconsistent. I mean, because someone asked in the chat, is Harvard just that good? Or like, what was going on with that Harvard-Howard game? They're just that much better than Harvard. I mean, than Howard was on the field. I mean, they were better at almost every position, just dominated it. But with Morgan's offense, it scares me to pick them, because even if they upset Central, Coach, who's to say that they go and score 6 points against South Carolina State or Norfolk and get upset? So I can't just say just because Morgan wins this week, but I think for Central, it'll be a huge first momentum step. And then I know people keep saying, watch out for that South Carolina State game, because they've given Davius problems. They've given Trey Oliver problems. Just in my soul right now, I'll be honest, I think Trey Oliver is going to, what was the quote? I want to make sure every light in the scoreboard works. I got a feeling that he is going to try to make, like, Coach, we both, listen, I know Trey Oliver. I've got to talk to him. I know you've probably been around him. He's going to, listen, he is going to try to put as many points on South Carolina State as possible. That's the one game that, especially being at home, God, I can't pick the upset for South Carolina State right now. So I still think it's Central at number 1, but I don't think this weekend's like the end all be all.
Okay.
I can't wait though. I can't wait. A Thursday night game. What is it? ESPNU.
Yep.
This weekend, I think listen, everybody should be tuned into that.
Please tune into that. Why not?
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah. And Miss Angie, I have not been to Northern Arizona's Dome yet, but it is like the highest elevation stadium in the country, and yeah, I've heard it's hard to play down there. Asked Montana earlier this year, and there's been some big upsets in that dome just because of the elevation. And Timothy, the spread for what? Let's see. If you're talking about the Morgan game this week, I would say probably Central by like 10 would be the spread.
I would say because Morgan can't score.
Yeah, that's my concern.
9.5.
Especially because Central's defense has been balling right now.
They've picked it up. Yes.
Yeah,
they've picked it up.
That's the problem. Is like if Morgan's defense has to be on the field for listen, if you let Davius get rolling, they'll keep the ball for 30, 35, 37 minutes
Death by a
of the
thousand paper
game.
cuts.
It's going to be a problem. Just ask Campbell what happened at the end of the day when they got worn down, man. But Coach, we're going to wrap it up here. I know a big weekend for you guys as you guys get on the road, go face UAPB. I know you're looking forward to getting back on the field. Guys, tune in Thursday, 4:35 p.m. Central Time. We'll make an announcement on the channel. Tune in for the preview. You can go to new website, si.com/college/FCS Football Central for all your FCS content throughout the week, man. My guy Timothy has a amazing playoff breakdown article dropping in the morning along with his behind the numbers segment. And we got a lot of stuff coming, man. But guys, for Coach Fred, for myself, for the Blue Bloods FCS Football Central, man, we are out for right now.